Larissa, give me a thumbs
Yes.
up. Yeah.
Thumbs
Okay.
up. I can hear you. I can see you.
Perfect.
Good.
Yes. So we explain all there is to know about workflows in the advanced training. However, usually most onboardings that go live do not include workflows. Why is that? Not because it's bad, but because it can be overwhelming, right? If you're in onboarding, you are overwhelmed with a lot of information set up, right? You need to make sure that you implement new stuff, etc. So if you think, hey, with all our data in, we understand how AG5 works, so let's get working with that. This is your primary objective. And then the reason I also really like what we do this webinar is workflows are kind of a natural stepping stone from there, right? If you go live with that, perfect. But I think there's always a good opportunity, right? After 3 or 4 months, you're working with AG5, you know basically what to do. Okay, how can you further mature? What can you start using in terms of features from there on? And my recommendation would always be start with the workflows, connect your workflows, make sure information is exchanged. So therefore, also for all the existing customers, using workflows is a natural stepping stone after the onboardings.
Nice.
But yeah, that's a rough introduction of what who I am and what workflows are and when to start using them. So we've prepared some examples here, some scenarios that can go wrong, right? Classic first example is a skill expires. So I think everyone knows there are certain skills, often certifications that can expire. Your driver license, right, for various things, your first aid certificate, right, those things are only valid for a certain amount of time. And if they expire, they're no longer valid. If you've an audit, the auditor can basically kick you a little bit for you letting your stuff expire. Of course, right, we changed the icon in AG5, but we also acknowledge that you're not online in AG5 all the time. So it might be a good idea to put in additional assurances in place that if something expire, you're on top of your game. Second thing is, I would say also quite sophisticated way of using AG5, right? So we have self-assessments that you can send if you want an employee to evaluate themselves on something or provide a certificate. But reality is also responding to that is not the employee's core job. They are busy with gazillion different things on the shop floor. And yeah, those requests might get unanswered. So maybe you want to put an automation in place that reminds them to say, hey, actually, please evaluate yourself, submit a request, etc. And the third scenario we want to discuss is skills gaps go unnoticed. And right, if maybe someone from senior management decides, hey, there's a new regulation, right? We need to comply with that. We need to set certain new requirements. And this is not communicated properly, and this is implemented, it might go also unnoticed that there's now a bunch of gaps that need to be closed. So these are the 3 scenarios I would like you to walk through today and basically explain how workflows can help you to deal with those scenarios. So the first one is, yeah, like I said, certifications are expiring. So basically, we will set up a workflow who reminds you that something is expired. Then the second one is the unanswered request. So you've sent a self-assessment. It is not immediately followed up on. So there's a possibility to send automated reminders. And then the third one is, right, there's a new skill requirement. How do I make sure that everyone who needs to know also understands and knows that there's a new requirement that they need to follow up on. First scenario, beautiful slide, by the way, Larissa, kudos to that, is the expired forklift certificate. So this is kind of the scenario we made up because forklift license a very common certificate we encounter and also one that expires regularly. So if you have such a thing, right? It expires at some time, and you want to make sure that people are on top of the game. So the challenge that you actually set me is quite complex, right? So actually, after 6 weeks before it expires, we want to notify the operator. 3 weeks before it runs out, we want to notify the manager, and 1 week before. So basically, if operator nor the manager acted, we want to loop in HR. So this is basically what we will be now cooking in AG5 directly. And yeah, this is here a matrix we have with all the people that need a forklift certification, right? This is the skill forklift. And if we look at the forklift certification, we see it is valid for 4 years. And 3 months. 3 months before it expires, the icon changes. So you can see this one here. Millie has a valid result, right? She received her license 2023. It will expire in 2027, which is still a long way down the road. So at the moment, we're fine. But here we can see already Harley, right? Him or her certificate will expire quite soon. So therefore, we said, okay, the icon should change. And this is kind of the 3-month warning period we set here. Where the workflow comes into place is actually putting additional guardrails, additional security on top, because as you can see here, we have quite a lot of already expired certificates, right? So for Jackson, for Arthur, for Daniel, all those certificates expired. And this is exactly what we want to prevent, right? Because maybe the person who was tasked with looking at this matrix didn't pay enough attention, right? They were busy with other stuff. So if we can set up email notifications, maybe they act before those things happen. In order to set up a workflow, we navigate to organization, and then we scroll down to the header workflow. And here we want to set up some workflows. Like everywhere in AG5, the big blue button on the top right indicates, hey, you want to set up something new, an employee, a skill, or in this case, a workflow. And we want to give this one a name. So here we say, okay, right, we have the task. We want to notify the operator, the manager, and HR if needed. So here we're going to say forklift operator. A workflow basically always includes an if and a then statement. So the trigger and the action. The trigger in this example, and we have a long list to choose from. We're going to use some during this webinar. The trigger here is that something is expiring soon, right? It is a skill that can be required, or even if it's not required, right? Here, if it's expiring soon, we want to notify. Then the second thing is we need to select either the individual skill or the set of skill that we want to send notification. Production qualification, I could set a notification, but right in the scenario we're talking here, we are only interested in the forklift. So I'm going to search for the forklift certificate. Here I find it. And now every time, right, if the forklift license expires, right, we will configure an action. Interesting to see here, right, we can choose between two options. We can say, hey, let's rely on the validity we set and the warning period, right? If you remember, 3 months before it expires, the icon changes. Again, the workflow is kind of our second line of defense. And I think the scenario here was actually 6 weeks, if I remember correctly. And please correct me. Correct me if I'm wrong, Larissa. But that is roughly, what is that? 45 days, right? Something like that.
I believe you.
Roughly, right?
Yes. Usually I use ChatGPT or something.
Okay, but let's go with 45 days. So it's right. The scenario is the icon is already changed, but we want now, if action was not followed, and we want to notify here the employee. So this is our trigger, right? If something, if the license is expiring, right, we want to send an email. The reason why I have a drop-down menu here is if you have a sophisticated setup, we can already send a notification to your LMS and say, hey, assign someone there. But in this scenario, we're only going to focus on emails. So here, actually, we want to notify the employee. So we have 3 different options, and we're going to use all 3 of them. So we want to notify the employee. And actually, we want to say here, your forklift license will expire on a certain date. So we're going to say, this is the header, by the way, your forklift license will expire. When, right? We do not know that from the top of our head. So we're going to use a little cheat sheet, right? A little lifesaver here. We can actually use kind of placeholders that take the information up to date directly from AG5. So we can see here the expiry date. So it will always calculate the exact date, basically when something is going to expire. I've already prepared something here, so I don't spend too much time with typing. This is the message we could send to the employee, basically saying, hey, then employee first name, right? This is the email template or the placeholder we use here. So we're addressing the employee here. Your forklift license will expire on, right? Please make sure to renew it on time. For any questions, right, reach out to your manager via the manager email. We always want to run this. We click on save. And now if we activate the workflow, now every time this statement is true, right, the forklift certificate is warning period, right, and it is 45 days before it expires. This email is going to be sent to the employee. Right, you can also send a test email if you want to see this. So this is basically what's going to happen. So we covered the first instance, we've notified the operator. Then let's quickly follow up with notifying the manager. So this is, again, we're in the forklift realm, forklift manager. And again, the trigger stays the same, right? So something is expiring. What is exactly expiring? It is our forklift. And here we're going to calculate 3 weeks, which is, 21 days, right? So 21 days before something expires, right? We want to notify them for the forklift. And actually what I've prepared here, the email is the following, right? We say again, we want to send an email. We want to notify this time the manager, right? So we've given the first kind of call to attention to the employee, right? They might be too busy with stuff. They don't know what to do. So, okay, there's still time. Let's notify the manager with this email here. So, right, the employee full name. So Peter Miller, right? His forklift license will expire. Again, we use the date. And then we say, okay, hey, dear manager, right, this employee's forklift license is about to expire. Again, we use the expiration date. Make sure to follow up with them to make sure that action is taken. Again, we save this. We basically make it active. And right, easy as that, we've configured two workflows. First one is notifying the manager, the employee, the operator. Second one, the manager. And then the third one we can configure again is the forklift for HR. Right, we really make a bit of an alarm out of it, saying, hey, right, neither the employee nor the manager have taken action, so please make sure that you follow up on that. Again, right, this one is the forklift, and we want to say actually 7 days time. Let's make it a bit more dramatic. We want to say, okay, HR at testcompany.com. Right, we really want to say, hey, critical, right, the employee's forklift license is going to expire. And then the nice thing, what we can also do is we can say, hey, HR team. And then we're not going to use the expiration date, but rely on a day calculation, right? To make say, hey, 7 days, please get your act together and follow up on that. And then again, we loop in the option to talk with the manager, say, hey, right, please out to reach the manager via this email to ensure that the employee renews the license on time. Again, we want to run this one, save it, activate it. And then, right, within the span of 3 minutes, I've configured 3 workflows that cover this scenario, right? Our forklift license is about to expire. If it's 6 weeks out, we notify the manager. If it's 3 weeks out, we notify, 6 weeks out the operator, 3 weeks out the manager, 1 week out HR. So we have clear chain of escalation, if you want to call it. Right, and this is basically our additional line of defense to ensure that the warehouse can be operated, and we really have put in effort to ensure that people get notified if things expire. Larissa, so far, do we have any questions from the chat on this? Anything I've missed?
We do have 2 questions from Javi and Jorn, but if you want to continue, we can also answer them at the Q&A session at the end.
Is the question directly about this, or is it a more general one?
It's quite specific. I
Specific.
think you
Okay.
want to wait.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we tackle that at the end. So,
Yes.
right. I hope that scenario is kind of close to reality. The second one, I also promised this one is a bit quicker, right? We're just going to configure one workflow, and at least the existing customers in the crowd, they hopefully know what self-assessment is. So within AG5, there's a functionality where I can request an employee to evaluate themselves, right? So you have done a training, maybe went outside for expensive workshop. Have you actually done the training, and what is the level basically that you have after the training? And you send out that self-assessment and nothing happens. To make it a bit more tangible, let's put us into the shoes of Peter Miller. Peter Miller is, if we look at Peter here, he's a team lead assistant, right? So he's not management yet, but actually his task is making sure that all these people have their certificates in order. He's inherited that, so he pledges, okay, I'm going to do a better job than my predecessor, right? Because at the moment we only have a compliance rate of 19%. We want to increase that. So he wants to start using self-assessments in order to get all the different licenses in. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to look how Peter sees the world. Right, Peter has this shared matrices, this shared matrix, and here you can see that Millie requires the light truck driver license. Right, it's for light truck. This is what she needs. Actually, right, Peter knows she went on a workshop to get the certificate, done all the training, but he needs to upload this for her in order to also showcase she has done the training. She can drive the forklift, the light truck now. So what he does is actually makes proper use of AG5, right? He logs in. He says, actually, Millie, have you done the training? So he requests self-assessment. Okay, this is for the light truck. He chooses the light truck skill. And Millie will receive this email basically asking her, hey, please log in, evaluate yourself, and upload your certificate or your driver license, right? So that it's clear that I can add this one. So this one will be sent. And what happens then? Nothing, right? And that's not Millie's fault. She is busy with all kinds of other stuff, right? She saw one email, forgot to reply to that. And now basically I have to go and do manual chasing. So let's help Peter make his life a little easier by configuring a workflow for him. So again, we go into organization, we navigate down to the workflows, and this time we want to set up a self-assessment reminder. And simple as that. Again, right, we do have to here we go. Again, we want to add a trigger. And this time the trigger sent out a self-assessment request, what we did just a few seconds ago. And how much time do we want to get an employee to evaluate themselves, right? To respond to the request that we sent? I would say 3 working days, that's fine. All right, so if it's not filled in after 3 days, actually, we want to send a reminder. And this email will then be submitted, right? We can make an addition, right? Like a personal note, hey, I know you are busy with other things, but please follow up here. So we click on save. Again, we make this workflow active. And in this instance, right, we've submitted the self-assessment request. nobody answered, right? After 3 days, right, this reminder will be sent. And now that's the wrong one. Now actually, right, she gets the reminder, she logs in, she says, hey, I've done this, I've submitted, I've done the training, I send it, and now Peter can actually approve it, and we get in the result. Where's Peter? Peter says, hey, hoo, now I have it, I can approve it. And now it's in here, right? So we're making our life easier by automating some reminders so that if people don't act on the first email, right, the system automatically sends a second email. And again, right, that doesn't mean that people are lazy or not reading their emails. It's just, right, if I get too many emails per day, right, it's hard to follow up on them. But if I get a reminder, right, maybe I see that there's some urgencies to follow up. Larissa, so far, any direct questions on there, or should we continue with the third scenario that we have prepared?
We do have a couple of questions. Maybe I'll go through some right now. The ones that are more general.
Yeah, please.
Pedro asked, would it be possible to notify an email list instead of an individual profile?
Yes, right. If you have an email inbox, I don't know, trainers at right X company, then of course you can notify that email inbox. But what's not possible is say, okay, hey, I want to have 5 different emails. But right, if they have an inbox, so for example, my team has an inbox, right? Solutions at ag5.com. If that inbox is notified, right, we all get the email. So that is certainly possible. Yes.
All right, that makes sense. And Leon also asked, in the workflows, how is the escalation triggered? Because you said if they do not respond, HR is notified. And if one or the other X, will that stop the escalation?
Yes, right. This is exactly what we want to see here, right? So I'm gonna move back here. So the first thing doesn't involve a workflow at all, right? Just 3 months before something changes, before something expires, the icon changes, right? People who are responsible should see this. Then we send out the first notification after 6 weeks to the operator. And if the operator directly acts on that, submits the new certificate, gets added, etc., neither the manager is notified nor the HR department is notified because the trigger we set is no longer true, right? Again, right, if operator doesn't act, but the manager acts, again, the statement that would trigger this email is no longer true. Therefore, it's no sense. So here we have a clear kind of chain of escalation. And if somebody acts, the rest is not followed up on, which I think is what we want to see.
Great. I hope that makes sense, Leon. He said thank you.
Perfect. Glad I could answer that question directly.
Also, one last thing. Janet said she saw that the reminder setting said no. Can we also set up a second reminder?
Yes, right. So we could set up a second reminder in the sense that we set an additional workflow, right? That we say, okay, one thing goes out after 3 days, after 4 days, etc. That being said, right, in a different configuration, right, we can also set a reminder for the initial request we set. So here we say, this is certainly possible and very nicely noticed, Janet. So here we said, okay, after 45 days before it expires, right, send the first one. And then we can set, okay, if this is still not true, we want to follow up after another week. So again, I can have full control. How often do I want to poke certain people? This is possible, yes.
Great. And a follow-up question would be, can the user upload a certificate when submitting that they've done the training?
Sorry,
I believe so.
can you say that again?
Can the user upload a certificate when they submit that they've done the training?
Yes, and this is right because the focus here is not on the self-assessment. So I didn't go into too much depth here, but yes, this is certainly possible. And also in this case, right, required that we say, okay, please show me the certificate here. So if I have a self-assessment for approval, I can not only assess myself, but I can also attach a certificate. Yes, that is possible.
Okay. I think we got to move on to the third scenario. Oh, there's no time left.
Okay, perfect. But glad to see that's actually kind of interesting what we're showing here. So third scenario is the new skill requirement. And yeah, that basically means, right, someone added new requirements. Let's make sure that everybody knows that there are requirements in place. So if you're unfamiliar with AG5, this might go a bit quick, but everyone else who's joining should know how to add requirements. So here in the example we've been using so far with Peter, we see here that only Millie has the light truck driver license as a requirement. But now there was the decision made that now actually, right, all operators need to have this light truck driver license. So what I do, I navigate into the roles and requirements, check the right job role, right, so operators A, I'm going to assign a requirement. I'm going to drag and drop it here. And now all those operators need to have this light truck driver license. And as you can see here, changes. Boop. Now I have a bunch of open gaps here. Again, right, in a perfect world, people log in regularly, check their matrices, notice, okay, there is a lot of stuff that I need to do, I need to follow up on. But again, let's be fair. It is not, right, a team lead assistant's job to log in daily. But right, let's make his life also easier and configure a workflow that also notifies him if new things pop up. And how we do this is, again, we go to organization, we navigate to the workflows, and we're going to create workflow. And this is like new requirements added. And again, right, as before, we're going to set a trigger, the if statement, if something happens, right? And in this case, required skill is missing, right? So these are the red icons you saw, right? If something is missing. And again, the question is, how broad do you want to make this, right? If you want to say, hey, this is for all production skills, meaning for all those 13 skills, namely here, right, all those things that also include, I believe, the light truck driver license. So this is kind of a bit broad, but be aware then we will send out email notifications for everything here, right? Could also be that you say, no, actually, we want to be a bit more targeted here. And in this instance, right, we are really only interested in the truck driver license. So I'm just going to select this. So this is completely customizable, be as broad as can be, but as specific as, right, you need to be. Now we set this up. So if there's a result missing as a skill gap, again, we want to set up a notification. And here, for example, we could, again, notify the employee. We could notify the manager. But in this scenario, we have Peter Miller as our trainer or supervisor there who needs to keep track of all the skill gap for you. Hi, Peter, because we know who we're addressing. There is a gap 4, and again, we can use the email templates, qualification name or the skill name 4, and then the employee full name. Please take action. Good luck. All right. So now again, we have a scenario that, right, somebody from upstairs had to decide, okay, there's a change in requirements. We need to make changes here. They do that in AG5, but all the relevant stakeholders, so in this instance here, Peter, right, because Peter is responsible for making sure that everyone has their license 5. He gets the email. So that hopefully then will trigger that he logs into AG5, sees he's to do what, starts adding the planning, starts adding results, and so forth. And yeah, those are the 3 scenarios that we decided to show for today. I'm very reasonable in time, I hope. I hope it was kind of interesting. And yeah, there might be some questions. I don't know.
We have a lot of questions, and I hope that you have some time left. Okay, let's go back all the way up to the first question. So Javier from Safe Logistics. Oh no, is Timo in the room?
No,
Okay.
I'm here. I just thought, okay.
Something happened.
No,
All right.
I'm
Whew,
there.
my heart. Yeah. Javi from Safe Logistics said, yeah, he wants to create a workflow for training which is required 40 days after completion. After completing a previous training, what would be the best way to create this workflow? He can't see a
Ooh,
warning moment.
yeah. Yeah, that's very specific. So my recommendation is here chat with Emil and then with Tessa, because she's the solution engineer for Saver Logistics, to figure something out together, because this is like really specific and I do not want to give wrong advice here. Usually, and you can see that in the triggers, we usually act on something is missing, right? This is also who's the second person? Yeah, via email, check with Tessa, or Emil can check with Tessa for you. But it's going to be a bit difficult because you can see, right, the trigger is always there's something missing, something is going away, basically there's a gap. This is also the lens we apply at AG5 on skills management, not something is there. There could be something with a skills action, but again, my suggestion would be in this specific scenario, really clarify what is it you need, what is the scenario, and loop that through Emil to Tessa, and maybe she loops in me, so we can have a joint a meeting, and we'll figure something out together.
Okay. And then we move on to the next question, also a bit specific, but Jorn from SC Johnson asked, would it be possible to send a summary instead of an email per training? He wants to avoid overwhelming employees with too many emails, as this can reduce the likelihood that they read it. I believe no summary.
Okay.
Are you there,
let me
Timo?
quickly check in with the user. I'll just move a bit close. I'm just moving a bit closer to the router, so that hopefully my connection is a bit more stable. So don't worry, I'm still there.
Okay. Yeah, the connection hasn't been all too smooth, but yeah.
Okay, sorry for that.
No worries. It happens.
Okay.
Shit happens.
Yes. Can you rephrase the question?
Is it possible to send a summary instead of an email per training?
No, right? Because the thing is, okay, we always say, okay, there is one action that triggers an email, and then it would become a bit difficult to say, okay, let's combine them into a summary. It is a good point, but it is slightly difficult to set up from a technical point perspective. Therefore, no, we do not send kind of summaries, because, right, things don't expire usually all at once. This is also something where it's okay, right? They expire over a certain period of time. So therefore, it is usually individual emails. This is also why you want to make really intentional use of it and not set something up broad notifications for everything for everyone, because then, of course, it can end up with quite a lot of email notifications. So you want to really be very deliberate about it.
Got it. I hope that answered your question, Jorn. And moving on, Kim had a really good question. The recipient's email address, does it have to be a user in AG5? Can you also add email addresses who are not set up as a user in AG5?
Very, very good question. And I hope that became a bit clear when I used HR at testcompany.com. So the answer is yes, right? So I can also notify people who are not inside AG5. Of course, yeah, HR I think is a good example here. The other common example we give is kind of a trainer. Right, who's not an employee in AG5, but who's often a user in AG5. But the answer is yes, right? You can also notify people outside. Just be aware in that scenario that you talk with your IT and make sure that everything is whitelisted. So, right, these things do not get blocked by any email security system that you've set up. But it is certainly possible. Yes, absolutely.
Great. I hope that answered your question, Kim. Tim also asked a related question. I don't know if there's a workaround this for this. He
Mhm.
asked, can we send one summary to the manager instead of multiple mails?
Yeah, and the answer is unfortunately not really. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not sure what Karen means by can you add your own choice of multiples?
Maybe in the sense, right, your own choice of multiple skills. That could be, yeah, multiple skills. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Right. So, of course, you can select one skill, you can select multiple skills, right? You can select them one by one, or you can set an entire library folder. So, you say, hey, we do have certain important security skills. And if something expires there, I want to be notified, or something is missing there, I want to be notified, then I can select the entire folder. So everything is possible. One individual skill, multiple individual skills, and entire library folders. Yes.
Great. Leon asked, we handle training manuals in another tool. Once
Mm-hmm.
finished, they sign with DocuSign SSO.
Mm-hmm.
Can that be a trigger for AG5 to list as complete? In other words, is interfacing possible from other software to AG5 to change status?
Yes, but I'm not 100% certain in which way you want a workflow behave in that way. So that is a bit unclear to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say in general, yes, but sometimes the devil is in the detail. So I'm happy to answer a question there in more detail if I have more information.
Yeah, well, feel free to reach out to info@ag5.com and we can get that sorted out and more specific. Um, and then moving on, Kim also asked for the matrices, we also have achieve, required, and gap. Which workflow do I need to select to get an email when we have a gap?
Yeah, so this is right the required skill. So usually you want to be talking about required skill is missing. So that one would also trigger, right, if you have someone who needs it on a level 2, but it's only achieved on level 1, right? Then you still have a gap. So this one is usually the required, non-required. No, sorry, the required skill is missing. Let me quickly put up the right window, then I can tell you for sure which one it is. Let me quickly take a look. So the right trigger would be sorry, I have to quickly set up a new workflow. And the right trigger is, yeah, a required skill is missing. So this would be the trigger for the scenario as I understood it.
Are you
Hope that
sharing your
answered.
screen?
No,
Oh, okay.
I hope that answered the question.
All right, then. Um, yeah, there's quite a few things in the chat.
Mhm.
But Leon also asked, is there any possibility to customize AG5 based on specific needs? Yes, there is. Or is it off the shelf and it is what it is?
So again, that is a question in the context of workflows, or
I think
in general.
I think Leon's not an AG5 user yet, so
Okay.
this is
Yeah.
general.
Yeah, in general. So within certain bandwidth, of course, right? So yeah, setup, of course, is unique, and this is basically what we spent the whole onboarding about, customizing it. In terms of layout, if you think, hey, right, I want this as a white label solution and put my own logo on it, no, this is not what we provide. In terms of customization for the emails that go out, yes, to a certain extent, right, this can also be customized. But of course, it depends always to the extent. So there's some element of customizability within certain, within certain parameters.
Got it. Well, and ask, can I send an email notification to HR when a user finished all trainings within a skill category?
That's a good question. Again, right here we're applying a lens that that says, okay, something is not missing. But yes, we have one trigger that is called skill action resolved, and that also includes skill results, right? So if we say, okay, a certain skill result was added, then notify someone, this is also possible via this setup. Yes.
All right. Jorn, like said, he has a follow-up. He
Mm-hmm.
said, on my first question of the summary mail,
Mm-hmm.
you could make it simpler by making a trigger that runs once a month to send the alarm list to a manager or employee. Just an idea. Is that
Yeah, that's
is that
a good
possible?
one. Well,
Okay.
not with the current setup, to be very frank, right? So, but again, right, product runs constantly over the certain aspects that we have, and I would have to look at the roadmap if additional workflows are on there. But for example, all the drop-down list that I showed at the beginning, this one is constantly expanding. So if I would have given the same webinar, I think in November, there would have been certainly fewer options. Now we're in March, there are certainly more options. So things are constantly improving. And yeah, this is not the first time I hear about this, being able to summarize stuff and not get individual emails. So that is something we are aware of. But right, my job is showing with what we have for the moment.
All right. Last question. So let's wrap it up.
Mhm.
Janet asks, can you trigger an email with an attachment to be sent to the user after they have completed a training course? Because
Ooh, yeah.
she she would like
Mhm.
the user to have some extra materials after they have completed the training.
Um, I'll get back to Janet directly,
Okay,
because I know
let's do that.
she's from RWE, who I'm working closely with. Janet, why don't you join our Tuesday call, and we can have a chat about it? Because the short answer is no, but I have some ideas how we could make something work. Yeah,
Great, you get a deep dive.
exactly.
And lastly, Tim asked, we always want an attachment, but it has not yet been implemented in AG5 that is mandatory. Is it
Yeah.
possible to trigger a workflow if an attachment is forgotten?
Um, I think it depends. So also here, the short answer is unfortunately not. But I think it is a bit in the context of skill approvals, right? If you say, hey, if I submit a result for proof, there needs to be an attachment. This is something that's being logged into, but I'm not 100% certain how the question relates to the use of workflows there. Of course, that could be a further expansion, saying, okay, notify if a result was added that doesn't include an attachment. So that could be a logical step forward, but currently, as is now, this is not an option. But I like the idea, definitely. Yeah.
Yes, we hear you, Tim. All right. I think that's about it. Do we have anything else, Timo?
No, I think that's it. Again, workflows is, as I see it, kind of the natural stepping stone after your onboarding, right? Because you can see, of course, in a perfect world, I can just work with the icon change. I can rely that people respond to a self-assessment. I can rely that people interpret icon changes in the right way. But workflows give the option to put a second layer of security, of assurance, of defense on that. And it's, as you can see, it's very easy to configure. Also there, right, if you're an existing customer and you say, hey, this is something I would like to start using now, reach out to your dedicated solution engineer. They will schedule a session, kind of take you by the hand, set up the first few workflows together with you so that you gain the confidence to start using that yourself.
Great. Thank you so much, Timo. This has been so insightful. And thank you so much for joining us today. All your questions, that was amazing. We'll see you at the next one. Thank you, guys.
It was great, and also good to see so many familiar names here. So thanks for that, and pretty sure we'll be talking soon. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye bye.